whether in the name of reconciliation or some other social justice cause, then they can take away any right that you have that's inconvenient to them.
Mark Carney is bringing Canada into a race-based society. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Carney's plan of allowing only those with certain colors of skin to have certain opportunities to be able to fish in certain areas. We got Conservative Sandra Cabina coming out with a bill for castle law. We got a ton of other stuff here. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we got Mark Nixon posting this from the Fraser Institute. Canada's debt trajectory is now the worst in the G7. In just 10 years, Canada has added 25% to its gross debt to GDP ratio. As we see here, these declines are being seen across numerous industries. We have this one here. Canada's auto exports fell to a multi-year low. Canada exports of motor vehicles fell 21.2% to 5.4 billion in January, the lowest level since September 2021. It goes on to say here, passenger cars and trucks saw the largest decline in exports, logging a decline of 32.5%. The auto industry is getting absolutely annihilated. And what's Mark Carney doing? He's going to go on vacation in Rome. We've got sales of zero-emission vehicles dropping 34.7% from 2024 to 2025. With that, we've got Honda canceling its EV productions. As Forbes says here, Honda's push to EVs has led to the company's first financial loss in 70 years, $15.7 billion. They are canceling 3 planned EV models in the US, and they're joining Stellantis in the $27 billion write-down, Ford with $19.5 billion, and GM with $7.6 billion. EVs are not selling, not what to bet the future on. And well, what's Carney and the Liberals doing? Adding $5,000 subsidies for EVs. Meanwhile, Canadians can't afford to eat. It's really quite shocking what the Liberal priorities are. They're not for Canadians. I mean, look at this one here. Hosted by Ezra Levant of Rebel News. So much for the Five Eyes. Canada is literally protecting street candy cartel boats by keeping their location secret from the US. Canada restricts street candy boat intel from US Navy's Caribbean airstrike operation. Can a Liberal voter look at this and sincerely believe that the Liberal government has their best interest in mind? I mean, it's story after story. We've got Melissa posting this one the day after Laurie Idlut becomes a Liberal. Reports of child S-word exploitation skyrockets 347% in Canada. When V-word and disgusting criminals are released, and released early in Canada, criminals know they have a safe place in Liberal Canada. This is what they wanted. And story after story here, I mean, you can see London teacher charged with SA released after second assault, second arrest, S offender released from prison, expected to live in Winnipeg, accused in SA of girl 3 in Welland, Ontario, was let out of jail early after V-word attack of boy. BC V-word tightening practitioner served 11 years for SA released from jail. It's interesting too that this is flaring up in the news today. It's almost like they're trying to muddy the waters of the Laurie Idlot story with her son. And turns out her other son has a whole bunch of stuff going on as well, but maybe if it's more relevant later, we'll bring that up. Jumping ahead, we got Ryan Gerritsen posting this. So this, I believe, is from Blacklock's Reporter from 2023. This article is coming back up regarding Laurie Idlut. It says Arctic MP isn't government contractor. First term New Democrat MP is a federal supplier whose firm has been awarded almost $500,000 in contracts since her election in 2021. MP Laurie Idlut of Nunavut, in a mandatory disclosure, said she was a major shareholder in a company with ties to an ex-Liberal cabinet minister. I hold a significant ownership interest in this company. The corruption is every single day with the Liberal Party of Canada. As Ryan says here, just Laurie being a major shareholder in a company that benefited from $500,000 in federal contracts since being elected. Could be even more now. Yeah, how much is it now? Now, on the bright side, we do have Conservative Sandra Cabina coming out with essentially a bill for castle law today. Bill C-270 would amend the criminal code so force is presumed justified when used against an illegal intruder, as Eli points out here. Since 2015, crime has risen 55%, gun crime 130%, and extortion 330%. It's a no-brainer to bring castle law into Canada. Every country should have castle law. So the CCFR posted this clip here. Just listen to the beginning of this. The reporters with the dumbest questions ever.
Canadians are forced through long and costly trials just to defend themselves, and no one should be dragged through this process for acting in self-defense.
The homeowner themselves is armed and they say, oh my gosh, someone's in my home, this is scary, I shoot and kill them. So even though the perpetrator who entered their home unlawfully is unarmed, would this protect them? And that would be seen as reasonable.
You're presupposing that the homeowner knows that this intruder is unarmed.
Checkmate. How would you know if they're armed or unarmed? That's the question. If someone's breaking into your house, they have ill intent to cause either harm to you or steal something. Either way, it doesn't matter. You don't know their intent. You just know that they broke in, so they do have ill intent. Bring out the toys, take care of business. We shouldn't have these people living in our society. They should be jailed. They should have to work in a jail for a long time, and then they should be deported out of our country. And people say, well, what if they're Canadians? Most of them are not Canadians. Let's just look at the facts. Most are not. Most of these people have come from South Asia in the last 3 or 4 years because of Justin Trudeau and now Mark Carney. Jumping over to the House of Commons, we've got Melissa Landsman laying the smack down on Tim Hodgson.
Yesterday, the Minister of Natural Resources made the absurd promise that Canada would, quote, do its part to help stabilize global oil markets. But Canada can't do its part because after a decade of liberal energy policies, we don't have a strategic oil reserve. When allies need energy and markets need stability, Canada has nothing to offer but the minister's promises. Conservatives have proposed a strategic reserve to fuel our allies abroad and give Canada real leverage, especially at times like these. So will the Liberals adopt our plan so that Canada can be stronger at home and more reliable abroad?
So she's talking about the oil reserves here. Mark Carney came out and said, oh, we're going to help with the oil reserves, when really Pierre Poilievre called them out yesterday. There are no oil reserves. Meanwhile, what are we seeing from the media today? CTV pushing this out. Canada will do its part to help IEA release of oil reserves, quoting Tim Hodgson here. Having a full article on this. This is ridiculous. We don't have oil reserves. They're just trying to help the government here. Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson said Wednesday Canada will do its part to lower the cost of oil globally as a bloc of nations looks to tame the surge in energy prices. We don't have oil, period. It's in the ground. It's not stored.
Speaker, let me explain to the member opposite the way the IEA works. Net importers have strategic oil reserves. Net exporters do not. That is how it works, Mr. Speaker.
That's not true. Pierre Poilievre already blew up that argument yesterday. America has massive oil reserves, and they're one of the biggest, if not the biggest, producer of oil right now.
Let me explain something back. Just because you don't have to do something, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't, especially when you lead your allies to believe that you will. We have a name for that. But the Liberals cannot paper over a 10-year record of shutting down the oil and gas sector, leaving our country weaker, more dependent, and unable to step up when it matters. They can say the words, they can sign the MOUs, but we all know that the minister's new project office hasn't approved a single new project. So will the government finally scrap the anti-pipeline law, repeal the emissions cap, lift the tanker ban, approve real projects so we can get Canadians to work and be there for our allies?
The Honourable Minister.
Apparently, Mr. Speaker, they don't agree with the Premier of Alberta that now is the time to build. This new Liberal government signed...
Look at this guy, so confident in his words, he's got to look down at his paper every 2 seconds to see what the next 3 words are.
And will deliver against the promise of the Canada MOU. We will build strong with Indigenous peoples. That's why Canadians elected the new Prime Minister, because the new Prime Minister knows how to work with the premiers, knows how to work with Indigenous peoples to build things. Unfortunately, the leader of the opposition does not. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You notice he just mentioned there twice, work with Indigenous peoples. When have Conservatives had problems working with Indigenous peoples? Indigenous peoples voted massively in favor for a pipeline out to the BC coast. It's only the coastal First Nations and these activists that got in the way of this. Liberals are the ones who shut it down. What we are starting to see here in Canada is a new set of race-based rules in Canada where you get certain privileges, you get certain rights based on the color of your skin. This is not a joke. We can go story after story. Man murdered girlfriend gets reduced sentence partly due because of his race. It depends on the color of your skin if you're allowed to have less time in jail for ending someone's life in Canada. He stabbed his girlfriend 15 times in a stairwell at a shopping center in Burnaby, British Columbia in 2021. This is the same story. This is the girl who was ended in a stairwell. We got this one just from last month. Ontario court reduces Indigenous man's sentence. In a significant legal development, the Ontario Court of Appeal has reduced the sentence of Kenneth Morrison, an Indigenous man originally sentenced to life for the 2018 home invasion and ending of Sean York in Kitchener, Ontario. The Court of Appeal considered Morrison's Indigenous status and his minimal prior criminal record as mitigating factors. Oh, that's right. So because he's Indigenous and he'd never ended someone before, you will give him a lighter sentence. Every Canadian should be treated the same. It shouldn't matter the color of your skin, but our country is becoming very race-based. And this is how the Liberals like it. BC's highest spending chief, Chief Harley Chingy of the McLeod Lake Indian Band, claimed $370,000 in expenses in 3 years, including high-end hotels, restaurants, upscale retailers, and Rogers Arena. These guys are absolutely ripping off taxpayers with this grift. Look at this story here. King Charles expressed concern over Alberta separatism in meeting with Indigenous leaders. You've got First Nation chiefs have gone over to meet with King Charles to try to subvert and end the Alberta separatist movement. Where's all the left melting down that they went to meet with a foreign government, just like Jeffrey Rath and the Alberta separatists went to meet with the Trump administration seeking a loan if they need it? Are they going to freak out about First Nation chiefs going over there and talking to King Charles? Who cares what King Charles has to say? The Grand Chief of Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations says King Charles expressed his concern on Wednesday about hearing about a separatist push in Alberta during a face-to-face meeting. I mean, really, there's a simple solution to this. If these Treaty 6 nations don't want to be a part of the separatist movement, and say if Alberta does separate, then they can just have their land cut off and they can be their own territory. They can be part of Canada. They don't have to be a part of Alberta. The real problem here is they don't want to be cut off from the gravy train of billions of dollars of taxpayer money. That's why they're so scared of this movement. These people live like kings and don't work. What's especially evil about the situation, too, is you've got these chiefs living like kings. You've got their band members, First Nations members who live on reserve, not living like kings, quite the opposite. They don't have clean drinking water. They don't have properly paved roads. These people suffer under these chiefs who live like kings. And then it brings in all this anger towards the band members who did nothing wrong, when really the chiefs are the ones who are causing all of the problems here. And they're going to reap all the rewards of all these land claims, these land titles, any sort of billions of dollars, as we've seen in the Cowichan Nation, being given back to First Nations. It's not the band members who are going to get any of that. They're just going to get all the anger from Canadians who are pointing frustration at band members versus the chiefs who are the ones to blame. Meanwhile, we've got this coming down the pipe from Dre Humphrey, Rebel News, breaking: the Liberal government is proposing race-based salmon fishing closures. That's right, based on the color of your skin, you get to fish or not fish for salmon. Non-Indigenous British Columbians could soon be restricted from fishing recreationally in South Vancouver Island and the Fraser Mouth. This is a real thing that the Liberal government is doing. DFO is proposing new salmon fishing closures around Fraser River mouth and parts of southern Vancouver Island as part of a southern resident killer whale protection measures. A 30-day public consultation is now open. Anglers and fishing communities are encouraged to review the proposal and submit feedback. I mean, if they're going to do this based off of killer whales or the fish, or there's not enough fish, it's the ecosystem is dying or whatever that is, if they have proof for that, then this should apply to everyone, including First Nations. Otherwise, this is just a race-based society where First Nations have more rights than Canadians, even though we pay for much of what they have in their bands. Chinook closures proposed areas. So you can see this huge area off the Broken Group. This is off of Yuki. I mean, a lot of people out in the West Coast here, they rely on fishing. They eat a lot of fish all the way down the southern part of Vancouver Island, Port Renfrew, Victoria, all the way up to the Gulf Islands, Gabriola, Salt Spring, etc., and then to the Fraser Mouth over here. The shift from Chinook non-retention to Chinook closures would take place in a majority of southern resident killer whale critical habitat. Looking at the details here on this website, take action now before your rights are extinguished forever. It does look like it applies to coho salmon as well as Chinook. If that's not enough, we got Caroline Elliott posting this: an active Aboriginal title claim by the Kwetwet'lem First Nation is currently before the courts. The NDP MLA for that exact area describes herself politically as a settler on unceded Kwet'lem land. With statements like these, don't be shocked when the BC government fails to properly defend this case and loses the way they did with the Cowichan. And she's not wrong here. I mean, look, settler on unceded land. This is a ridiculous conflict of interest. This person is supposed to be representing the citizens, and yet they're essentially trying to take away citizens' rights. Here's land title claim area. This madness isn't going to end. I used to live just up here. The reason why I think they're going after this land, these are all wetlands here. It's high value property. I don't believe the city's allowed to build on those areas, but if First Nation's able to claim it, then they could just do whatever they want. And so they have hundreds of millions, it's probably like $1 billion+ of land there. I used to have a community garden plot in here. Jumping over to the Toronto Sun, we've got Lorne Gunter here, going one step further and saying all this stuff that's happening in British Columbia, he said this could come to the rest of Canada despite there being treaty agreements. If this gets pushed too far, what he's essentially saying here is what stops the Liberal government from ripping up those treaty agreements and applying these rules across Canada.
First Nations. The other 9 provinces are all covered by treaties in which Aboriginal title was given up by First Nations in return for a number of promises from the federal government. Plows for agriculture, guns for the chief, a suit of clothes and $25 a year for senior members of the tribe. There are lots of things that were in those treaties that have since morphed into much larger benefits, like universal health care, education for as long as you wish to stay in university.
That's right. So Canadians pay for First Nations to go to university, but our own kids, well, I don't have kids, but if I did have kids, they'd have to pay their own way, or the parents would have to pay for it. But First Nations kids get all that for free.
There's all sorts of rights now that are seen as treaty rights, and those came because First Nations gave up their Aboriginal title to lands in the other 9 provinces. So why do you say, how come you're so worried that this is going to go after private property in the other 9 provinces? Does it really take that much imagination to think that a judge could say, the federal government hasn't really lived up to its part of the treaties. It hasn't upheld its end of the treaties. So therefore, I'm going to declare the treaties invalid and give Aboriginal title to First Nations.
It's a great take here. Well, you see everything that's going on. How is this not a possibility? As he said, that justification, we didn't live up to our agreement in the treaties, thus we'll make them invalid and give you land title over everything. Kaboom! And what happens? Canadian land value absolutely plummets. You got to wonder what's going on here. Did Justin Trudeau pump up the real estate? All these guys bought in early. Did they dump it? And then now they're tanking the real estate so they can rebuy it, and then they get another Liberal government in there and pump it back up? Is that what they're doing? It's hard to follow. There's so many storylines of what's going on in our country. Are they trying to tank the land value so China can come in and buy up all this land at bottom barrel prices?
And once the government can come for your private property, whether in the name of reconciliation or some other social justice cause, then they can take away any right that you have that's inconvenient to them.
That's just it. They can take away any right. And we're seeing new bills coming down the pipe right now, which are awful for Canadians. One's regarding the internet, Bill C9 going through. And what's Mark Carney going to do when he finally gets his majority government?